Hello, welcome back to another video about Dostoevsky. Today, my basic theme is just, in a broad sense, weird stuff about Dostoevsky. And I have to admit, though, that I am a bit limited in, I have, the only Dostoevsky that I've read at this point is I read my first Dostoevsky novel, The Idiot. And I already did a vlog or whatever, but this is my second one. I have not read Crime and Punishment. I tried to read The Brothers Karamazov when I was a teenager. I only got maybe a couple hundred pages in with it before giving up. And then more recently, I read Notes from the Underground. And I mean, this book also features The Gambler, but I haven't read that one yet. So I'm just saying I'm going off of only a couple stories here. But nonetheless, there is a footnote about Crime and Punishment, right? Before I read that footnote, are you guys aware of the concept of the Hyperstition? This is something that, I used to hang out with a guy, another friend of mine who has mental health issues. We used to get together and talk about Philip K. Dick and funny stuff, but we talked about this idea of, what happens when you are writing a story and then the story that you're writing blurs into real life, or it turns out there's some sort of crossover between your creative process and the actual real world around you, where you can't tell if, you are writing the story or if the world, or it's all kind of coming through you. Are you channeling something that's out there in the environment? There's the idea of the Hyperstition came from the CCRU, Nick Land. I did a weird studies course and we had a chapter on the Hyperstition. There is this whole thing about William S. Burroughs and the Lemurian Time War. Basically, Nick Land, before he became some kind of right-wing weirdo, was doing stuff with the CCRU, and there's a story that he was writing about, which is kind of, the idea is that taking, what happened, the CCRU thing is, what happens if you make up a lie about something that happened in the past, but then present it as if it's true, and then if you can, if the fabric of reality is kind of permeous enough that if you believe a lie enough, it becomes the truth, or something like that. And that he was trying to do this, make this sort of try to do this thing about, there's this William S. Burroughs story about the lemurs and an anarchist colony in Madagascar, and what if this was a real thing or whatever, and trying to create, try to do a kind of reality jump to another reality where certain fictional stories are actually true, right? This is a little bit different because what I'm talking about is Dostoevsky. In this case, imagine, if you will, you were writing a novel about a murder story or a crime story, and that you imagined a character, you imagined a situation, you laid out your whole plot line, you're writing the story, and then as you do, you're reading the newspaper of the current events, and then something in the newspaper sounds eerily, uncannily like the story that you're writing about. Well, apparently this is exactly what happened to Dostoevsky. Let me just read this. This is footnote number 38 for The Idiot. I think this is from the part 1 anyways. So this is what they say in this, from the footnote section, right, in the back of the book. The reference is to a case that Dostoevsky himself read about in the newspapers. A 19-year-old Moscow University student by the name of Danilov was tried for the murder and robbery of the pawnbroker Popov and his maidservant Nordman in January 1866. Dostoevsky was particularly struck by the similarity to Raskolnikov's Crime and Punishment, which he had been at work on for several months. During Danilov's trial, it came out that the young man who wanted to get married had been advised by his father to stop at nothing, not even crime, to achieve his ends. So, again, this is the thing, I haven't read Crime and Punishment, but Dostoevsky kind of has a self-referential thing in The Idiot where he references reading about that in the newspaper, right? and it being kind of weird, right? So that's one weird thing about Dostoevsky that I encountered. And there's a lot of weird stuff in this book. I'm not going to get through it all today, but I will just kind of move on to another one. Let's see here. Okay. There's this whole thing in The Idiot about the apocalypse. And for me, I don't know how many other people have been going through this kind of stuff, but, I have to admit that as somebody who has been, like I said, I've had a history of mental health stuff. I've gone through lots of funny different states of mind and stuff like that, and at least, I've got a handle on it. I can be stable. I can not get in trouble. I can stay out of the hospital. And, I don't need to go into all this kind of detail. But there's something about this year 2023 that I have to admit, there's a lot of people talking about it as if it's the end of the world or the apocalypse or something like that. And I don't know if this is particularly because of the wars going on, or if this is because of COVID-19, or if this is because of environmental issues, or this is because of a general state of economic depression, or what it is. But I see it a lot in the cultural psyche at large, right? So it was a kind of a resonant time to read The Idiot in 2023. But just to preface this thing, there's this whole thing about Dostoevsky. I will read a bit from this, right? But there's something kind of funny about this thing about the star Wormwood. When I was a kid, when I was a teenage, this is the whole thing. My teenage stoner days. I don't get. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't get too much of my personal life there. But there's a song by the band The Orb. Maybe I will link it in the description. But it borrows an audio sample from a play or something where the character is talking about Wormwood being, was it Russian for the Russian? If you translate the Wormwood into Russian, it's Chernobyl, right? Is that not a bit weird? But of course, this is, I don't know if that so keep that in mind first of all when I read this part, and also to maybe whatever. I'll go into the commentary later, right? So there's a stuff about the apocalypse and Chernobyl, or Wormwood, I would say. And there's this character, Lebdev, and it comes in this part where he's like, Lebdev's son assured him that the star Wormwood in the apocalypse, which fell to earth on the fountains of water, was, in his father's interpretation, the railway network spread across Europe. And then later on, let's see if we can find it, we have this place where Lebdev himself talks about it. Here we go. You're always talking about sleep, my nanny prince. As soon as the sun appears and resounds in the sky, who said that in the poem? The sun resounded in the sky. It's meaningless but good. We'll go to bed, Lebdev. Is the sun the wellspring of life? What are the wellsprings of life in the apocalypse? Have you heard of the star Wormwood, Prince? I've heard that Lebdev thinks the star Wormwood is the network of railways spread over Europe. And then I'm just going to skip through here a little bit where we can, because there's a lot of kind of like long-winded rambling in this book. But okay, so anyways, let's cut to the chase here. So then, Ganya was seething in another corner. It turns out, in your opinion, that the railways are cursed, that they're the bane of mankind, a plague that has fallen upon the earth to muddy the wellsprings of life. Gavrilia Ardanovic was in a particularly agitated mood that evening, a merry, almost triumphant mood, as it seemed to the prince. He was, of course, joking with Lebedev, egging him on, but soon he became excited himself. Not the railways, no, sir, Lebedev protested, beside himself and at the same time enjoying himself tremendously. By themselves, the railways won't muddy the wellsprings of life, but the thing as a whole is cursed, sir. All this mood of our last few centuries. As a general whole, scientific and practical, it is, maybe, indeed, cursed, sir. Certainly cursed, or only maybe. It's important in this case, inquired Evgeny Pavlovich. Cursed, cursed, certainly cursed, Lebedev confirmed with passion. Now, this is kind of like, again, I'm going to just sort of like skip through this because there's a lot of just kind of like, oh, hold on, maybe should I? I'm going to just assess how much of this I should actually read to get to the point. Okay, I have some stuff. I'll just skip to the bits I've highlighted. To you guys can read this on your own. Hold on. I'll just start here. A perfidious and derisive thought, a goading thought, Lebedev eagerly picked up on Evgeny Pavlovik's paradox. A thought uttered with the purpose of inciting the adversaries to fight, but a correct thought. Because worldly scoffer and cavalier you are, though not without ability, you don't know yourself to what degree your thought is a profound and correct thought. Yes, sir, the law of self-destruction and the law of self-preservation are equally strong in mankind. The devil rules equally over mankind until a limit in time is still unknown to us. You laugh? You don't believe in the devil? Disbelief in the devil is a French notion, a frivolous notion. Do you know who the devil is? Do you know what his name is? And without even knowing his name, you laugh at his form, following Voltaire's example, at his hooves, his tail, his horns, which you yourselves have invented. For the unclean spirit is a great and terrible spirit, and not with hooves and horns you have invented for him. But he's not the point now. How do you know he's not the point now? Ippolit suddenly cried, and guffawed as if in a fit. A clever and suggestive thought, Lebedev praised. But, again, that's not the point. The question is whether the wellsprings of life have been weakened with the increase of railroads, cried Kolya. Not of railway communications, my young but passionate adolescent, but of that whole tendency of which railways may serve as an image, so to speak, an artistic expression, hurrying, clanging, banging, and speeding, as they say, for the happiness of mankind. It's getting too noisy and industrial in mankind. There is too little spiritual peace, complains a secluded thinker. Yes, but the banging of carts delivering bread for hungry mankind may be better than spiritual peace, triumphantly replies another, a wildly traveled thinker, and walks off vaingloriously. I, the vile Lebedev, do not believe in the carts that deliver bread to mankind. For carts that deliver bread to all mankind without any moral foundations for their action may quite cold-bloodedly exclude considerable part of mankind from enjoying what they deliver, as has also already happened. So I think I can just stop there. There's this thing going on anyways, which what do you really need to say about that, really, right? I think it should be self-apparent that the railway system is, he's not talking about the railways, he's talking about capitalism, and he's talking about industrialization, basically, right? So here you have, there's also this question, though, is Dostoevsky presenting his own opinion in the form of Lebedev, or is this just a character presenting a certain point of view, not necessarily what Dostoevsky agrees with, right? But I don't know, I'm starting to realize that, Dostoevsky was, in fact, anti-socialist, anti-communist, and there's this whole kind of political angle to it, and you see people like Jordan Peterson bringing up, doing Dostoevsky bits in his lectures all the time and stuff like that, and I am quite enjoying reading Dostoevsky, but I do come from a socialist-leaning family, and I think you can appreciate Dostoevsky, and it doesn't have to entirely be about using Dostoevsky for some sort of political position to against, a certain, sort of form of politics. But the thing is, it's kind of interesting to read The Idiot, and there's as much in there that's against capitalism, and there's as much in there that's against the industrialization, as being, and this is one of the things that you have to understand, is that where did Marxism and communism come from? It came from the Western Enlightenment, right? It basically came out of the same process of, science and the emancipatory, pure reason, right? That we are going to free ourselves from the superstitious thinking of the past and create a new world that is, formed on the basis of our scientific insight and our technological mastery and our, the industrial, and that Marxism and all this kind of stuff came out of all this, right? And it was, maybe Dostoevsky was reacting against Marxism, but he was also reacting against the Western Enlightenment that was putting railways everywhere, and where would that lead, right? And there's something interesting about this that I find is like what on earth would Dostoevsky make of the internet? I feel like this is like the kind of, the burning question in the midst of all this, because Dostoevsky was a guy he talks about in Notes of the Underground how he just will go for whatever mental stimulation he can find, and back then, books are the only way to, if you're just sitting around being lonely and you need, what would Dostoevsky have been like if the guy had like Twitter or like, TikTok or all these, would he produce all these novels, or would he just be like, corrupted by this junk, about having his brain connected to this information railway system that is basically the devil, right? And so there's something about this that is, like, when I was reading Notes of the Underground, there's stuff in Notes of the Underground that sounds awfully a lot like, AI or the internet or something like that, right? Maybe I can read that. I put a little post on Notes on the Underground about like, maybe I can just transition to some other point though, because there's this whole thing about like the Crystal Palace, right? Like this kind of idea of like creating this sort of perfect society that is built with the technology and rationality and reason and everything. And there's a certain thread that he was running from that I found really interesting. And this would be another weird thing about Dostoevsky that I wanted to include in this, was that I'm sure everybody's heard of George Orwell's 1984, and how in 1984 there's this whole thing about 2 + 2 = 5 as being the kind of, you have your totalitarian fascist regime, and to accept Big Brother is to accept that, the 2 + 2 = 5, now that the boot has stamped on your face and you've been crushed into submission, you admit that 2 + 2 = 5, right? And I didn't know, that did George Orwell come up with this notion of 2 + 2 = 5, or did he actually get it from Dostoevsky? Or even weirder, if you consider this whole thing about the hyperstition, is it possible that Dostoevsky is some kind of a time traveler even? I don't know if we want to go down that one too far right now, but I will read a little bit of, where am I going to pick up with this one? Okay, because I think this is a good segue what I was talking about before with the railroads and all this kind of stuff. I'm going to just pick it up from here, right? And this is Notes from the Underground. Man loves to create and to lay paths. That's beyond doubt. But why is he also so passionately fond of destruction and chaos? Now tell me that. But I should like to say a few words about that in particular. He is not perhaps so fond of destruction and chaos, and it's indisputable that he is sometimes terribly fond of it. That's absolutely so. Because he is instinctively afraid of achieving his aim and completing the building he is erecting. How do you know? Maybe he only likes the building from a distance and not in the least from nearby. Perhaps he only likes building it and not living in it, handing it over afterwards au anima domestique, like ants, sheep, and so on and so on. These ants have a completely different taste. They have one incredible building of this kind, forever indestructible, the anthill. The respectable ants began with the anthill, and they will no doubt finish with the anthill, which goes great credit to their steadfastness and optimism. But man is a superficial and unseemly creature, and perhaps like a chess player, he only loves the process of achieving his end and not the actual end in itself. And who knows? It's impossible to be certain. Perhaps the whole aim under which man strives on this earth consists simply of his uninterrupted process of achievement, or to put it another way, in life itself and not strictly in the aim, which goes without saying can be none other than the twice two's four. That is to say, a formula. And you see, twice two's four is no longer life, gentlemen, but the onset of death. At least man has always been so afraid of this twice two's four, and I'm still afraid of now. Let us suppose that man does nothing but search for this twice two's four. He crosses oceans, he sacrifices his life in this quest, but to find it, really to find it, good God, he's somehow afraid. You see, he feels that. When he finds it, there won't be anything left to look for. At least when workmen finish their work, they receive money, go to down to the tavern, and then up to the police station. And that keeps them busy for a week. But where can man go? At any rate, one notices something awkward about a person whenever he has achieved such an aim. He loves the process of achievement, but not so much the achievement itself, and, of course, this is terribly amusing. In a word, man is comically constructed, and obviously there's a joke in all this. But twice two's four is nevertheless an intolerable thing. Twice two's four, well, in my opinion, it's a cheek. Twice two's four watches smugly, stands in the middle of your road with its arms akimbo and spits. I agree that twice two's four is a marvelous thing, but to give everything its due praise, twice two is five can also be a very nice thing. So, how do I need to go on with this one any longer? This is which I find interesting, anyways, because this is the inversion of 1984, where in 1984, twice two's four is the rational truth, and twice two's five is some oppressive lie that the government pushes onto you, right? Whereas in Dostoevsky's understanding, twice two's four is the achievement of the whole rational enlightenment, that this kind of going to, rationale, the word rational comes from the word ratio, right? The word to be, which is rationality, the word rationality etymologically relates to a mathematical precision, right? And so to have a completely rational society is to have a completely mathematical society, and it's to eliminate any form of, or to have, it's not even like a, you could also relate it to, a lot of people these days are complaining about the technocracy or something like that, right? But it's like this whole thing of, not to be pro-science or anti-science or anything like that, but this idea of like having a highly computerized world, having a system where everything is done according to a precise calculation. In the more precision you have, there's less room for error, and by extension, there's less, humanity. It's like do we really want our life to become a kind of a well-oiled machine or something like this, right? And I think that there's this kind of thing where, we live in this world where there's no real ambiguity. Like the algorithms know everything about us. There's, we think we have all these options in terms of our free will, but, really it's like, the algorithms can probably figure out what kind of person we are and what kind of choices we're likely to make, and, what kind of people you get along with and which kind of people you wouldn't, and, you don't actually have to do anything because, the machine can just figure it all out for you, and it's like, this is one of the things that Dostoevsky kind of riffs on and notes in The Underground. And I think there's something about, that when he was saying that it's not the railway itself that's the devil, but this whole impulse to build the railway, this whole impulse to build this whole apparatus. And I don't know, like, maybe I'm just kind of rambling about it here, but I find that, this is the side of Dostoevsky that I don't really see Well, like I said, I'm no scholar. I'm not really that familiar with it. This is just my reaction to reading a couple Dostoevsky stories and a couple strange things that stood out for me, anyways. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. There are some other strange things in The Idiot, such as God being a tarantula and this weird nightmare scene, but I won't get into that now. I hope you like this video. Thank you very much. You can like and subscribe, but this is my smaller channel that only has 15 subscribers, and I don't even care that much, so whatever. You know, don't like and subscribe. I don't care. Alright, have a good day.